Permission to come aboard.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
And here we go.
Live from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, welcome to episode 106 of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of theepicreview.com and proudly presented by the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network, also proudly featured on actionfigurebarbecue.com. That's actionfigurebarbecue.com, barbecue spelled out. I'm your host, the real Brad Bell. Thanks for clicking play. Thanks for downloading us for episode 106. 2 weeks in a row now. I'm proud of that, especially with a 14-month-old. But enough about my kid and excuses not podcasting. The solo show seemed to work well last week. I got some positive feedback. I got some constructive criticism from Amos of the Just Being Amos podcast. So Amos, if you're out there, I appreciate that. We're going to keep on with this format until, we can work out a time frame and schedule where we can have Amos, Andrew, Jerry, somebody like that on, and it's not having a podcast at the crack of dawn. So we're going to go with the episode 100 format with the super segments, a little Epic Games segment. Of course, we'll do checking out, and we'll have our confirmation segments of confirmed crap and confirmed epic and random tweets at the end of the show. I guess they're not random if they're pertaining to topics we have. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into what we've been checking out this week.
Check checklist? Check. Double check checking of checklist? Check.
Okay, I've been checking out a few things. Probably the biggest one is Tim Burton's live-action Dumbo from this year, the 2019 version. Now, I've seen Dumbo, the cartoon, maybe one time when I was a kid, and I think it's like a 62-minute movie, and for whatever reason, it didn't really stick with me. But I buy all the Disney 4K Blu-rays just so I know they're going to be on Disney Plus and 4K, all these classics and whatnot. But I still like ownership, as we'll talk about in a topic later on in this podcast, of the media, especially if it's something I know that my child and maybe future children can continue to revisit. And just, I don't know, there's something about giving them the access to pop that in the Blu-ray player. Of course, I never would let them do it. I'd have to do it for them, and letting them watch those, kind of like we did with the Disney clamshell VHS cases. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and talk about Tim Burton's Dumbo. I didn't expect much. It has Colin Farrell and it has Danny DeVito. Oddly enough, it has Michael Keaton. So we have Michael Keaton and we have Danny DeVito reuniting in sort of a circus movie, which is awesome because think back to Batman Returns. Danny DeVito's done a few circus movies with Tim Burton because you had Batman Returns, you had Big Fish, and of course he is the ringmaster here in the Dumbo, the nice one that originally finds Mrs. Jumbo, who happens to be pregnant with Dumbo, the elephant's hell from the Far East, not really specified by Danny DeVito's character. I expected a generic paint-by-numbers adaptation, minus the racist crows, of course, of the, I think it's 1941 is the original Dumbo, the 1941 Disney classic, because that's what all these other ones have been. They did a lot with Dumbo. They added to it. They really played up on the relationship between, I'm not going to spoil it here, but Dumbo and his mother, Mrs. Jumbo, unlike they do in the original version. The ending's completely different in this version. I'd say this is a lot more of an uplifting movie. If you've seen the original Dumbo, it's just kind of a downer. But that's not what really kind of made this movie for me. It was really the first movie that our daughter Harper, 14 months old, was captivated by. Every time baby Dumbo was on screen, she was oohing and eyeing and pointing, so much so that we watched the second viewing, which I usually don't watch. Within 2 days, I watched Tim Burton's Dumbo twice. Now, I didn't see this in the theater. This is my first time seeing it, and just seeing the joy light up on her face, that's what the magic of Disney is all about. Seeing that childlike, of course she is a child, but for me, being able to feel that childlike imagination and wonder through her is just that was worth the $32 that I bought Dumbo for at Best Buy. Hey, the acting's good. Colin Farrell puts in a decent performance. Danny DeVito's great as always. Michael Keaton is chewing the scenery in this, even more so than he did as Vulture from Spider-Man Far From Home and Spider-Man Homecoming. It is just fun to see DeVito and Keaton on screen together. They do have some kind of weird chemistry, and I've only seen it in the 1992 Batman Returns. I'm not sure if they may have been in some other films together. I can't recall off the top of my head, but man, I gave this a grade and a half, so a 4.5 out of 5. I looked at the tomato meter; it was down in like the 40%, and I remember people they didn't hate this movie, but it came out this past March 2019, and they were lukewarm on it. You know, if I was making a list of my favorite films of 2019 so far, keep in mind, I'm seeing a lot of these as they come out on 4K Blu-ray and streaming and digital download and whatnot, then I would have to say that this would be in my top 5. So it'll be interesting to see where it falls at the end of the year. I've seen 115 movies this year. We're recording this on July 1st. Now, a lot of those were repeat viewings. Movies that had never been documented on my Letterboxd, which you can find me on Letterboxd at RealBrad. But yeah, I highly recommend Tim Burton's Dumbo, especially if you had kids. I also checked out with my wife something after Harper went to bed that we both wanted to catch in the theater because she's a big Stephen King fan. I'm not as big as she is, but it was the 2019 Pet Sematary Remake directed by Kevin Koch and Dennis Widmeyer. And this movie kind of got crapped on. A lot of film podcasts crapped on it. Rotten Tomatoes score was low. The original Pet Sematary film is pretty beloved, especially those characters of Gage and Church. And for whatever reason, this one didn't resonate the way that the I think it was 89 or late 80s, early 90s. When the classic Pet Sematary movie came out, I remember seeing that. My parents were like watching it on TV or something. Like, so this is edited. Of course, they would show a lot more on TV, it felt like, back in those days, like during the day, than they will now. You can find a lot more graphic stuff on TV, but it's after a certain time on certain networks. I'm sure they just had like network TV, and I remember this scaring the bejesus out of me, especially all the scenes with the pets, because you guys know I am a pet lover. Even though that's not the title of Pet Sematary is misleading because it is about the death of pets, but it's about so much more. It's mainly about loss and remorse and how people deal with grief. And it's a depressing movie, but it's a depressing story. I mean, it's not like you go into Pet Sematary to be lifted up. It was a big emotional drop after we watched Dumbo like the day before, which also had its sad moments. I'm not going to say what they do. They change up a major part of the Pet Sematary book, which was also adapted in the original Pet Sematary movie. I can see how this would rub some people the wrong way, and I really enjoyed this movie. My wife was kind of bored with it. I gave it a 3 out of 5, but as I was watching it, I enjoyed it. It disturbed me. It kept me on the edge of my seat most of the movie. Jason Clarke turns in a memorable performance. The best performance of the movie is the little girl that plays Ellie. I'm going to look that up right now because I have to give her credit because, you know, Jason Clarke's, he's just solid in everything. He's never bad. He's never great. He's always just good. But this little girl was great. John Lithgow's in this too, and just he's fantastic in everything he's in, especially in those supporting roles. And he plays Judd here, the creepy neighbor. Anyway, Jetty Lawrence plays Ellie Creed. I think she's a relatively unknown, but boy, she knocks it out of the park in this movie. Again, they switch some things up, so I guess if you're like a Pet Sematary diehard or purist, I could see why you don't like this. But if you're somebody who's just wanting to experience the Pet Sematary story for the first time and you don't want to read the book and the old movie is just kind of too dated for you, I think you're going to really like this. if not, if you're a purist of horror and of Stephen King, probably going to be disappointed, probably worth skipping for you. One other thing that I got to check out this week is something I've wanted for a long time. We talked a lot about Diamond Select's gallery figures last week, and usually you get these pretty cheap. However, there's one that's very hard to get because they haven't. A lot of times they'll do like GameStop exclusives, Diamond will, and they will end up giving them like special window packaging with a flap open and comic art, and then end up re-releasing them with just a generic box. They did this with the Red Hulk. The GameStop one was hard to find. It had like Ed McGuinness art on the Velcro flap. It was very, very well presented by Diamond. Not that they do a bad job in general, just they really knock it out of the park with these exclusive boxes. It makes you feel like you're getting something like a hot toy, even though it's not, but still you get that feeling a little bit, that extra oomph to it. That word that we like to say. Sounds like my daughter eating her oatmeal. When kids do that, cutest thing ever. But it was the Dark Phoenix, which was a SDCC 2016 exclusive and a GameStop exclusive. I don't know how it can be an exclusive if it's at two different places, but I think they did 5,000 of these, and boy, they're hard to come by. They're on eBay usually for 100 to 150. I saw one at Heroes Con for like 144 random price, but that's what they were asking. And you know, there's the regular Phoenix with the green outfit's pretty good. It's not a great figure. And then the white Phoenix is just, which was a SDCC exclusive in 2017, is just a blah figure. But what makes this an awesome piece, and you can find YouTube reviews and unboxings and reviews of this all online, just Google Dark Phoenix Diamond Select gallery figure, is she has the whited out eyes, which the white version does too, but stay with me. She has a translucent red hair, and she has a base that is the Phoenix, which the other two have the green and white versions, but this one is I don't know, it's a little bit bigger, it's a lot more detailed. They put a ton of detail. They kind of launched the gallery line with this figure, and they knocked it out of the park. So I'm never going to be able to afford this. I'm just not going to pay over $75 for a gallery figure, but I ended up winning with the box, albeit an open box version, for like $32 on eBay, and I got that, and I was not disappointed by this figure. If you want a Phoenix figure, let's be awesome. As much maligned as the Dark Phoenix movie stores have been, that's one of the most iconic comic book storylines of all time, and you can never take away from what John Byrne and Chris Claremont did with that character, the development of that character over, you know, about 30, 40 issues, culminating in the Dark Phoenix saga. She looks great on the shelf. I got her on display in one of my IKEA Billy bookcases next to my signed copy by Chris Claremont of the Dark Phoenix saga, albeit paperback, but still. By the way, they got a new omnibus of the Phoenix saga, which I think is everything that builds up then the Dark Phoenix stuff. The trade paperback's just the Dark Phoenix stuff. But if you want a Jean Grey figure, you either want like the classic Marvel girl or the classic 90s suit, but let's be honest, you want the Dark Phoenix. And if you don't, you're lying to yourself. So if you can find this on eBay or a secondary seller for under $75, and you're a big X-Men Jean Grey fan, I would jump on it. I would give this figure like confirmed epic for the price I got it for. Now, if I paid $100 scalper price, it's not worth that. But I was patient about it my time, and I'm glad to say that I did. So that's the Diamond Select Gallery Dark Phoenix Jean Grey figure, SDCC 2016 exclusive. That's going to do it for what we've been checking out this week. Let's get into an Epic Game segment in which we do some over-unders regarding the MCU's future. Okay, over-under. So I'm going to give a base number, and we have to guess if it's going to be right at or over under. Usually we're going to go over under just to make this a lot more interesting. So let's get into it. So over under 4 years until we get an MCU Fantastic Four film. Over under 4 years. I'm going to go over. I think it's going to be 5. I think we're going to get this run of sequels to the Phase 3 newer characters like Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, etc. We're going to get Eternals. We're going to get the Black Widow prequel movie. And then I think I wouldn't be surprised if they cap the end of this next phase, which would be Phase 4. Right? Yeah, Phase 4, which starts after Spider-Man Far From Home, which, as of this recording, comes out tomorrow. They could cap it with a Fantastic Four film instead of saying an Avengers film. And that could be... And there's a lot of ways they can do it. You know, people have referenced the Snap. Maybe they were in space. Same thing with the X-Men. Maybe it activated the X gene. But that's a conversation for a different day. But I'm going to say just over 4 years, I'll go 5. All right, over under 6 years before we get an X-Men MCU film. I'm going to say over. I think they're going to give this franchise a while to rest. Now, this is a film. This isn't I could see a post-credit stinger maybe in about 4 or 5 years. But as far as a film, I think it's over 6 years. Over 6 years. And I'm going to jump around here between... kind of X-Men stuff, Fan 4 stuff, classic Avengers stuff. So I say over. That property needs a little time to rest. I say 7 or 8 years before we see one. Next Avengers film. The base is 5 years. So we over under 5 years. I'm going to go over. I think it'll be about 6 years. I think they'll build toward Kang the Conqueror. They'll give us our classic kind of our classic kind of Avengers, new Avengers team. Maybe get Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, get maybe War Machine in there, but definitely Falcon, Cap, Captain Marvel. All these characters that have been introduced in Phase 3 carry their own new Avengers film against Kang. Kang is I think he's Franklin Richards' son, so Reed Richards' grandson in some Marvel continuity and some Marvel stories. That could be a way to bring the Fan 4 in. So I say we'll go over because I think it'll be about 6. A mention of Doctor Doom. Over under 3 years. Oh, this is a tough one because you could theoretically bring Doom in without bringing the Fantastic Four in, even though those are so linked. He's just such an iconic big bad that he could theoretically be your Thanos for the next set of saga MCU movies. I could see a scenario in which it's the Doom saga and it culminates in something like the original Secret Wars. I'm going to take a bold risk here. I'm going to say under. I think we get some kind of mention of Doom, Latveria, Doombots, something within the next 2.5 years or so. Maybe post-credits Eternal scene or something. Mention of Silver Surfer, 3 years. So kind of the same base years as Doom. I say over. I think we'll get a Galactus type or something that the Silver Surfer could be involved with. It maybe doesn't even have to be Galactus. They could switch up the mythos and Silver Surfer could be linked to Kang. Silver Surfer could come to warn the Avengers about Kang. But I'm going to say, it wouldn't surprise me if it's 4 years, but I'm going to say over 3. Mention of Galactus, 4 years, over under that. I'm going to go over. They build toward Galactus. It'll be the culmination of like a trilogy of Fantastic Four films or the culmination of a saga, and I think that's like, I could see that being a decade away. Okay, mention of Wolverine, 6 years. I'm going to go over. I think they let the Hugh Jackman Wolverine rest, be retired before they try to bring some. He's not as iconic as like Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, but he's right there as far as being associated with playing a character. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. So I say it will be over 6 years. I think we'll have 1 or 2 X-Men films before we bring Wolverine in and before we bring the Weapon X stuff in, which I think is a good idea. I would love to see an X-Men movie with that original lineup of Beast, of Cyclops, of Marvel Girl, so Jean Grey, and of Angel. And that would be Warren Worthington. I believe that's Angel. And then Professor X. I know they kind of did some of that with First Class, but I would love to see that original lineup, the one that Bendis brought back from the past to the present. I need to finish that Bendis X-Men run. Speaking of the original X-Men, Funko, by the way, and a little tidbit of collecting news, they're doing Marvel 80th anniversary pops, and they're releasing in the original X-Men outfits the original 4 Funko Pops for Beast, so not the blue, like the more humane Beast, for Angel, for Marvel Girl, Jean Grey, for Cyclops. So I'm hoping to pick those up, but that's going to be perfect to get us started on our super segments. Let's go ahead and get into our collecting super segment of the week.
Each sold separately, batteries not included.
You can collect Star Wars toys to build your forces and join the rebellion.
Sticking with Funko, our collecting question for the week is, should Funko be making political/historical pops and our historical pops? So what's the origin of this topic? We picked up the Funko American History Pops. I ordered Ben Franklin and Washington from Amazon. Ben's on his way, got George already. I found there's 4 Target exclusive American History Pops this July. So we got Abe Lincoln, we got Rosie the Riveter, and we got Uncle Sam. So there's another one with Washington's ship crossing the Delaware. It's a deluxe pop. I don't think that one's hit Target yet, but I hope to put these up in my classroom, which is why I'm trying to pick them up. The kids love them. Pops are so big, and just, they're such a generation spanning collectible that a 30-something-year-old teacher loves them, and even 16, 17-year-old kids coming in to learn about George Washington like seeing that physical representation, that collectible. So I think that will be cool. Now, this is only the second wave of historical pops that Funko's ever done. In the 2016 election, we had Hillary, Bernie, and Trump. I had all 3, and I ended up selling them. That's one thing I do regret selling, because especially the Bernie is just so hard to get on the aftermarket right now. But should Funko stay away from this? I mean, there's nothing more polarizing than our current political climate, and Funko is such an adorable kind of escapist thing. Do we really want to bring that into the Funko collectible world? Could this turn some collectors off? Could people who buy Funko here or there for their kids, could this turn them off? Or would it be as simple as they just don't buy those pops? I mean, Funko is notorious for taking like an evil character such as a Thanos and making it an adorable pop. So if they make Thanos, who is this genocidal maniac from the MCU, this infamous villain now within pop culture, then why can't they make Donald Trump? I'm not saying Trump's Thanos. I'm just saying Trump rubs a lot of people the wrong way. I think the difference is one's real life and one's fictional. And I think when you begin to bring these real life people into the collectible world, that's something as mainstream as Funko Pops, I think you risk alienating a certain part of your target audience, a certain part of your market share. Now, I think you're doing Abe Lincoln and George Washington. I think you'll be fine. However, when you get to like World War II on, if you start to do those presidents, I think that's where you could get down a slippery slope. Now, the argument against this was if they do future presidents, and that's a big question, should they do every president? They've already done Trump. Maybe they've already done another president, Bernie Sanders, from the 2016 Funko Pop line. Who knows? But should you continue? You got Washington, you got Lincoln. So theoretically, you got 4 presidents. If you think Bernie can win 2020, I don't think he will, but that's just my opinion. No offense to any Bernie Sanders supporters out there. But should they do all of them? The argument for that is, well, we're going to do both liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, Whigs, the Federalist Party, the the anti-federalist party. Why not? You know, if you're a diehard conservative, pick up the Trump one, pick up the Reagan one, pick up the Bush ones, pick up the Nixon one. You get the point. If you're a liberal, get the Obamas, get the Carters, get the FDRs, get the Trumans, Kennedy. Or if you're me, you're a history nerd, a history teacher, you want to be a completist and get all these. I think if they've already opened kind of, hey, I know I overuse this cliche, but they've already opened Pandora's box. So I think now you have to do every president. You've already done Trump. You've already done Lincoln. You've already done Washington. And I'm sure President Trump loves to hear his name mentioned with those two great presidents and this Funko Pop line. But although the 2016 election line was a different line for Funko, but I think you just go ahead and do them all, let people pick and choose what they want. I think where you get into a bigger risk, not so much with Uncle Sam and Rosie the Riveter, because those are, if you didn't know, why Rosie is based on a real person who was portrayed in a Norman Rockwell painting. Those aren't real people. They're just fictionalized. They're basically propaganda used by the U.S. military during World War I. You had Uncle Sam in World War II, and of course you had Rosie in World War II to get females inspired to take the male spots in the factories. And if they wouldn't have stepped up, we wouldn't have won World War II, which is something I really try to get into in my history class. I think if you stick with those types, you'll be fine. Those fictional characters and those presidents. I think if they get into like world history pops, oh boy. Like if you're trying to do like Julius Caesar or Genghis Khan, or now look, I'm not sitting here saying they're going to make an Adolf Hitler Funko Pop. Believe me, somebody would buy it, unfortunately, but or a Stalin Funko Pop or a Mussolini Funko Pop. I'm sure they're not going to bark down that road, but I'm sure there's also people who wish they would, and I wouldn't display those in my classroom. I wouldn't buy those. But you got to be careful if you go. I hope they don't go into the world history realm. If they do, they got to be very, very careful with how they tread in that direction. Also, since they did the 2016 line, are they going to do the 2020 presidential nominees for the Democrats? I mean, I know we're not going to get all 24 Democrats, 4 of which couldn't even reach the debate stage this past weekend. But I would like to see a Beto Pop. I would like to see a Julian Castro Pop. I would like to see Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren Pops. Those would be very cool. And I don't think ultimately that presidents will hurt their wonderful, adorable, and lovable brand, as long as they stick with presidents politicians who had actually been presidents, and fictional people like Uncle Sam and Rosie the Riveter. As much as I do want those 2020 Democratic presidential nominees immortalized as Funko Pops, I think that's where you get in trouble. As long as you stay with the U.S. presidents and fictionalized historical representation, I think you'll be okay. So that's going to do it for our collecting topic of the week. If you want those, you can find them all at Target right now. The only one that's hard to find is Abraham Lincoln. He is flying off the shelves. So if you want a Lincoln, go out to Target before you have to pay eBay an absurd amount for Honest Abe. Let's go ahead and get into our film topic of the week. So I'm kind of cheating on the film topic a little bit this week because the film topic is about San Diego Comic-Con. The question is, does SDCC, San Diego Comic-Con, still matter? And the reason this is under the film topic is over the past 10, 15 years, it's become more about movies than it has comics, even though comics and collectible companies, especially higher end ones, have a pretty good stake in San Diego Comic-Con. So what's the origin of this topic? The origin is Sony, Warner Brothers, and Universal all are skipping San Diego Comic-Con 2019. Disney skipped it last year, but Disney will be there this year. So are they pulling out because they're making way for Disney and they feel that anything they do will be overshadowed, especially with rumors they're going to announce the next 5 or 6 MCU movies, or even maybe announce what the next overall saga is, or maybe tease the X-Men, or maybe tease Fan 4, which would blow up all my over-unders from earlier in the show. Are they simply just getting out of the way for Disney, or are they not there because they don't see the benefit of it? This is a very tough question to answer, but I think it's probably because it's not worth it, because the main thing they do is show a trailer, which 5 to 10 minutes later is available online. Fans, now sometimes that's not the case. I remember famously with Spider-Man 3, they showed Venom, people went nuts. We know how that turned out, but you could find the bootleg copy of that on YouTube, which was just starting back then, but you could not get it instantaneously. We're in an instantaneous media culture right now. People want it now, or they're going to be upset, or they're going to just forget about it and move on to the next thing, because we have so many forms of entertainment at our disposal. So the past few years, they would release something at San Diego, like a Deadpool trailer, and then boom, right then and there it would be online. So it's like, what is the studio getting out of paying to go to San Diego Comic-Con? More importantly, what are the fans getting that wait 10 hours or sometimes more to get in the Hall H to see something that they could have streamed, in their jammies from home, and saved a whole bunch of money? It's, as much as we who are not there want to see this footage, it's not fair to the people who put in that work. So to me, Disney's the end-all, be-all right now, and if they're there, San Diego Comic-Con still matters, especially when this is a D23 year. You got D23 in August. They're Disney's own convention. They could easily just announce whatever they're going to do at San Diego Comic-Con. They could do it there. But the fact that they choose to bring their brand, the Marvel brand specifically there, shows you that there's something special still about San Diego Comic-Con. That yes, D23 is going to have more of your Disney diehards, from everything from Marvel to Star Wars to mainly the classic films, people who are fans of, and it's mainly for press as well, kind of like an E3. But to give you that perfect crossover between comic book fans and comic book movie fans, which are 99% of the time one and the same, even though some pretentious comic book readers try to pretend that's not the case. I think that it's the perfect intersection of fandom to do it at San Diego Comic-Con. And to me, they are making SDCC relevant by being there. Also, we could be seeing an evolution of San Diego Comic-Con, or maybe a de-evolution, if you will. Maybe we're going to get back to where San Diego Comic-Con, hence the name Comic-Con, is more of a comic book convention, where Marvel and DC make their big announcements, and Image makes their big announcements. I think, of course, I would rather see that, but I think that's more likely than SDCC just simply fading into obscurity. There's too much name recognition and name brand for it to just go away overnight. That would definitely be an overtime thing. I think it would just get smaller, which many people could argue is better if it was more comics focused and had some TV stuff and had some movie stuff, just didn't have like major studios there. I just don't think it's going away anytime soon. As long as Disney is there every 2 to 3 years, it's going to keep its relevance. So to me, San Diego Comic-Con still matters. Let's go ahead and get into our comics topic of the week. Sticking with Marvel, our topic and our comics question for this week is, why didn't Marvel have writer Sina Grace's and Iceman's back? For those of you who don't know, Sina Grace is the writer of the solo Iceman series that came out not too long after it was revealed that Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, was gay. So what is the origin of this topic? Sina Grace came out this past week and said that Marvel, specifically former Marvel editor-in-chief Axel Alonso, refused to defend her from cyberbullying resulting from her solo Young Iceman story starring a gay Bobby Drake. that Bendis kind of had originally outed. Now, she just wanted the company to kind of have her back and put out some statements and tweets defending this Iceman book. And you got to remember, Sina Grace is not the one that brought Iceman out. It was Bendis. I believe Sina Grace is part of the LGBT community. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure she is, which makes this an even bigger offense. If I'm misspeaking on that, I apologize to Sina Grace. But this is probably the most important story of the week because it's serious. And Marvel, which is now Disney, but we're saying Marvel here, especially since we're talking about the comics, who had been so progressive and pushing characters like Kamala Khan and pushing Jane Foster Thor and pushing Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. When those stories didn't sell, they kind of went back to the classic straight white, mainly male, but still female characters. Now, they didn't start drawing female characters like they did in the 80s and the 90s and early 2000s and objectifying them and whatnot, but they kind of went back to the old playbook that had worked on for so long. Hey, it's a business, so from one perspective, you got to understand it, which I can understand, and what is unjustifiable is the fact that when she reached out to Axel Alonso for help, which is her boss, he basically pointed her into the direction of training to deal with cyberbullying. In other words, here's the tools to deal with your problem, but you got to deal with it yourself. Even though they greenlit this book, they knew that the internet trolls were going to come out hard on this book. And it really kind of gets to another problem was the outing of Iceman a cheap stunt? Because you got to remember, if I remember correctly, it was the young Iceman who was outed, which means in Marvel continuity you had two Icemen, because Bendis had brought Bobby Drake from the past into the present, who was a young Iceman, so you still had the older Bobby Drake there. Maybe it was the older Bobby Drake that was gay. I can't remember, but regardless, that's besides the point, because you had one straight Iceman and one gay Iceman. So you kind of had your cake and ate it too, right? The LGBT community could be excited, be happy about representation in comics. People who couldn't accept the fact that Bobby Drake is gay could say, well, the real Iceman's still straight. See, that's a problem. If you're going to out a character, maybe you don't do this in which there's two versions of that character in main Marvel continuity. Maybe do that where there's only a single character in that continuity. To me, that was just, I don't know if it was cheap, because if you remember, it kind of came out of nowhere in Bendis' X-Men run toward the end. It wasn't like they built, we have a big reveal coming in 3 weeks. You won't believe who's being outed by Brian Michael Bendis. It wasn't anything like that, okay? But it was really, really talked about, especially on comics Twitter. And for them to just do that to a character in which there's two versions, I think was kind of cheap. But that's not as cheap as what Axel Alonso was, by basically forwarding Sina Grace, and for Sina Grace, I apologize, forwarding her basically cyberbullying training. To me, that's complete and utter bullshit. I'm sorry. And it's surprisingly shameful for such a progressive company like Disney. Forget Marvel. Disney is one of the most LGBT-friendly companies in the world, let alone the United States. And they embraced the LGBT community before many other corporations ever did. And about 3 years ago, they were promoting that diversity in their comics. To me, this is just a big, big mess for Marvel. I know that Axel is not the EIC anymore. I think it's Cebulski. But they need to come out and have Sina Grace's back. They need to do something for this version of Iceman, which I'm not reading the Matthew Rosenberg Uncanny Run, which is right before Hickman's run. I get maybe they don't want to comment on any of this because maybe Hickman's going to do some stuff with it in his Powers of X, House of X, or his subsequential, I'm sure, X-Men and Uncanny X-Men books that will be like every other week. I'm just feel really bad for Sina Grace, and I feel really bad for people who read this book and identify with this version of Iceman. I read the first 6 issues, so about the first trade's worth. If you want to support Sina Grace, but you'll also be supporting Marvel, go pick up the trades of this. They're really cheap on Amazon. And then tweet at Axel Alonso and tweet at Marvel and let them know how much this character means to you and how much you want to see this version of Bobby Drake moving forward. Look, they canned this book. I don't think it had anything to do with Iceman being gay per se. Solo X-Men books just don't last long. Around the time that Iceman book launched, there was a Cable book that I also read the first 4 or 5 issues, and it sputtered out. So, to me, that's a real shame. I'm sorry that Sina Grace is having to go through this, and hopefully Marvel will learn from this mistake and rectify it going forward, and continue to embrace diversity. Look, you can still have your classic characters, your straight characters, but that doesn't mean that we can't move toward a 21st century progressive mindset whenever we're writing newer characters or we're creating newer characters. So let's go ahead and move on to our TV topic for the week. Our TV topic for the week, our TV question, is cable and satellite getting ready to make a comeback? So what is the origin of this topic? This past week, it was revealed that NBC and NBC Universal, same company, bought back the Office streaming rights from Netflix for $500 million. And the Office will stream exclusively on the NBC Universal streaming app starting in 2021. Now, I don't know when the app is launching. I'm assuming it's before 2021. But as far as like outrage and reaction, this is the most important topic of the week, but it's maybe the most far-reaching topic of the week, and it brings up some big questions about what is TV viewing going to be like moving forward, and how do people view TV properties in our current streaming culture. And you can really dive deep into this, and just definitely not a psychologist, but how people view some of this stuff is just fascinating to me. Okay. Why could this be possible? We thought cable and satellite was dead. The term cord cutter was injected into the cultural zeitgeist like no other term about 3 years ago. And it made sense. Instead of paying $150 for cable, just pay $50 for internet, and then pay $10 for Netflix, $10 for Hulu, and $10 for fill in whatever third streaming service, Shudder, WWE Network, whatever. So basically $70-$80 a month instead of $150, and you're not getting a bunch of channels you don't like. That makes sense, and it worked up until about the middle of 2018, where all of a sudden, to watch everything you wanted to, it almost looked like it was going to be cheaper to have cable or satellite than it was to pay for CBS All Access, in addition to Hulu, in addition to Netflix, in addition to Apple's current streaming service and Warner Brothers' current streaming service, and you get the picture. It's a crap load of streaming services. And I think that now that's no longer we asked this question on episode 100, are we at the point of oversaturation with streaming services? I don't think then we were. I think we're there now. Especially if we're not there, we're right on the cusp. Like when WB and Universal launches, we will be at the saturation point. When you do the math on all this, it's just as efficient having, price-wise, having like DirecTV, or I can't believe I'm saying that, and having, Time Warner, which is Spectrum now, than it is, or Comcast, than it is having 10 streaming services. And not only that, it's a little bit more accessible because you just sit your DVR and boom, all your stuff's right there. Now, some stuff you get exclusively on streaming, I get that, but at what point do people say enough is enough? I'm just not going to watch that. I got to pick and choose. I'm still going to have cable and Netflix, or I'll have cable and Shudder, or I'll have cable and Disney streaming, which I think is about where we're going to be at. It's probably cable, Disney streaming, and we'll keep Netflix as long as they can continue to produce original content. But it's got to the point to where I pay $142 a month for cable and internet, and that is like every premium channel that you can get, not counting like HBO's, but like AMC. My wife loves the Bravo. We love Below Deck Med. We love Southern Charm. Shout out to those guys in Charleston. But it just makes sense almost to kind of embrace cable, especially if you're getting a cable company or satellite company that's offering you no contract with something like DirecTV Now, which I think is $40-$50 a month. But you basically get DirecTV monthly, and if you want to cancel at any time, there's no cancellation fee. Sounds like I'm like promoting for DirecTV, but I promise you I'm not. But there were some other questions that kind of arose out of this. Are people who stream entitled viewers? Do they just expect stuff to be there? I don't think when people see something on Netflix, I'm talking about not people who follow movie and TV news every day, not film Twitter. I'm just talking about your average viewer. I think they say, all right, The Office is on Netflix. Whatever's on Netflix, it will always be there. It's not going anywhere. I bought Netflix, so therefore I bought The Office. And that is complete and utter bullcrap, because you are paying Netflix, who is paying someone else for the rights to their property and to be able to distribute and stream their property. And people need to start to understand that. If something means that much to you, you need to buy the physical media, as I mentioned with buying these classic Disney films on 4K Blu-ray. Look, I'm going to have Disney streaming. They'll all be there probably in the glory of 4K and HDR, but they could go away at any point. So I like knowing that I own them. Which brings a bigger question, which can maybe be discussed at a later point on this podcast. Is physical media getting ready to make a comeback? Because when you buy physical media, as much space as it takes up, as inconvenient as it is to get up and change the disc, it is yours. And the Office DVD set on Amazon was like $25 before this was announced. That's the complete series, guys, which is crazy because they used to be about $50 a season. But it sold out immediately and is now going for $150 upwards on eBay and from secondary Amazon sellers. So you see a direct cause and effect there. You got the cause, Office is leaving Netflix. The effect is every single copy of the Office complete series is sold out. So this shows you that physical media may have all of a sudden, by the oversaturation of the streaming market, been given like a new pulse. It's like a defibrillator here for physical media. And maybe that's the bigger story. Maybe it's not cable and satellite that's making a comeback now. Maybe it will be physical media. Maybe it will be both. Hey, I'm somebody who buys 4K Blu-rays and still has DirecTV. So they're preaching to the choir here. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next 4 or 5 years involving physical media, streaming, and cable and satellite. There's like this weird just battle for the soul of cinephiles and average viewers between these three things. Now, another question is, does this generation, meaning people, let's say 16 to 30, do they feel a weird connection to The Office that's kind of out of time? Because The Office was, I'm 32, will be 33 in March. The Office was something we DVR'd. We got together in college a lot of times to watch these. I remember we were excited for the Super Bowl episode after Super Bowl 43 when the Steelers beat the Cardinals. We were just as excited for that Office episode, the hour-long one that was following, as we were that Super Bowl. Because it was the show. It was what Big Bang Theory was before it became mainstream. It was what Friends was, Cheers, Frasier, Seinfeld, Everybody Loves Raymond. You get the picture. It was the it show for my generation. People, I would say, 30 to 40 right now, and maybe even a little bit older. But now as a high school teacher, I have my kids come in and say, Mr. Bell, have you ever watched The Office? Yes. In fact, I have. In fact, I watch every episode as it came out every week. It was an appointment viewing experience on network cable, which is really not a thing now, much less a thing that my students can understand. So it's so weird how streaming is kind of messing with the prism of time as far as how people feel about stuff. Take something like Back to the Future. I love that movie, but I know that movie was before my time. That doesn't mean I can't love it, but I don't associate it with my generation the way I do, like the first Avengers or something like that, or The Dark Knight. And there's nothing wrong with, having a film from the past or TV show from the past resonate with you. I've been doing that my entire life as a film nerd and TV nerd. But at the same time, you need to have a respect and understanding from where that TV or movie, that television show, or film came from, and what era it came from, and what were the jokes pertaining to, and what was the writing pertaining to, what was going on at that time. Because I think a big part of getting the most out of a show is the climate, specifically the political climate, is taking place within. Sometimes when you watch Cheers, they make a reference to an obscure political figure that you may have no idea who it is, but if you were watching it then, it probably meant something to you. Let's go ahead and get into our random tweets of the week.
Chicken, Peter, you just a little chicken. Chip, 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 chip.
Who are you calling a chicken?
Come on. Chip, 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 chip. You're not good. You're just a chicken. Chip, 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 chip.
Again, maybe I need to change the name of this segment because I looked these up based on... Now, randomly, I picked somebody, but I looked these up based on the topics we have in the show. So, the first one we have is from Adam Reck. He is from @ArthurStacy on Twitter, and he is talking about the Sina Grace Iceman kind of controversy. So here's what he said. I'm not even going to touch that. Well, we did on this show, Adam. So what I will say is that Sina's Iceman did feel sort of like a Marvel's sacrificial gay lamb. He was a gay writer writing a controversially outed gay character. So he was, Sina Grace is gay, on a solo title. According to Adam, he is. It felt very much like Alonzo saying, let's see if this flies. So in other words, if it was good, what Adam's saying is that Alonzo was going to take all the credit for this major X-Men character within the mythos of the mutants within Marvel. He was going to take the credit for it. And if it failed, he was kind of going to distance himself from it. It didn't fail. The book had solid sales. You can say it failed, Brad, because it got canceled, but there's a lot of great books that get canceled. Same thing with TV shows. Same things with movies that don't make any money. Can't judge everything by the bottom line, even though I know Marvel's a corporation. So that's from Adam Reck @ArthurStacy on Twitter. The next one comes from @Sydney Nichols. She's @Sydney Nichols on Twitter. And it's regarding The Office leaving Netflix. Unpopular opinion. I love The Office as much as any other fan. But, is it really that important to keep it on Netflix? If you like it all that much, just buy the DVD box set. Well, you can't right now unless you're going to pay over $150. And you can watch it as many times as you like. There's an important lesson to take from this Office controversy, from Sydney's tweet, and from our TV topic. If you really like something that much, go and buy the physical copy. I'm not saying buy every single Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray that comes out every week or the box set of every TV show, but it's something that if you cherish so much that you want to rewatch multiple times, and beyond that, you want to be able to share it with your children or maybe even your grandchildren or nieces and nephews one day, go out and buy it. Just do it if you have the money. And that is great advice from Sydney Nichols @Sydney Nichols on Twitter. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our final segment of the show, which is our confirmation segment.
Today, I'm keeping another promise to the American people by nominating Lord Voldemort to the United States Supreme Court.
Okay, confirmation segment's our final segment of the show in which we confirm one group, comic, corporation, collectible company, you get the picture, as crap, and one as epic. I don't think the crap is going to be a surprise this week. We're going to confirm former Marvel editor-in-chief Axel Alonso as crap for not having Sina Grace's back for that Iceman book. So definitely confirm crap. You should have had Sina Grace's back. If you were going to allow that move with a character as iconic as Iceman, you should have been willing to stand up for what you believe in, if you really believe in anything at all. I apologize if I misspoke. I may have mentioned Sina Grace as a lady. Apparently Sina Grace is a male, and I do apologize for that. It's because I've read that Iceman book, and it is a fantastic story. So go buy that trade and support Sina Grace. As far as confirmed epic, I'm going to give Hasbro a confirmed epic, something that Jerry does a lot, old Barbecue 17, and that is for them putting out their Marvel Legends Punisher War Machine helmet, 1/1 prop replica. It's basically what it says it is. It's a time when Matthew Rosenberg did a 3 trade or so arc of when Frank Castle got the War Machine armor, and he was War Machine and Punisher pretty much at the exact same time. There's also a Marvel mobile game that has this character who's apparently very popular to play with. Usually with the Marvel prop replicas, it's only movies like Mjolnir or the Infinity Gauntlet from the MCU. But to have something from the comic book page and from a video game is a good step, I think, for these Hasbro replicas. I'm not a huge Punisher fan. That being said, I think I'm a bigger Punisher fan than it sometimes seems. I just hadn't liked current takes. I haven't read the Cosmic Ghost Rider stuff. I haven't read this War Machine stuff. I need to. But I was always more of a fan of the Max series, and after that, it kind of lost its way after the Garth Ennis stuff. But this is pretty cool. I'm not going to spend $100 on it, but if you're a Punisher and or War Machine, let alone a fan of both, or that video game or that comic, I think that's a must-have, and you can find it at one of our former sponsors' website, BigBadToyStore.com. So, Hasbro, you're confirmed epic. Axel Alonso, you're confirmed crap for this week. I think that's just about going to do it for the 106th edition of the Confirmed Epic podcast. I just want to say we've had a podcast 2 weeks in a row. That excites me very much. I'm liking the flow of the solo stuff. I see you guys are still listening, still downloading. I'm getting feedback from other podcasters, so I greatly appreciate it, and it's something I definitely plan to do every week this summer, except for next week. We're taking our annual trip to Pawleys Island, South Carolina, in which I will be reading a lot of comics, but not podcasting about them. So lots of reading and laying back. I can't wait for that trip. So looking forward to that. Big shout out to my in-laws. Thanks to my in-laws. They take us with them, Jeff and Lori Curtis. So no show next week. Don't think that's because I've given up or quit on you or quit on the pod. That is not the case. It just means I'm on vacation, and hopefully that following week, it may be toward the end of the week that we get back, but I will have a new show. Who knows, maybe even work something out with Amos or Jerry to get on here. Also, I wanted to mention before we close out, the plan is to see Spider-Man Far From Home tomorrow. Got Lori Curtis watching Baby Harper while I go see it in IMAX in South Charlotte. I may try to record a little mini pod, like 15 to 30 minutes on the car ride home, talking about my thoughts on Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm not promising that. If I do that, I will try to post that as the episode for the week that we're off for vacation. I know what you're thinking. Brad, you missed like 10 weeks before this. We don't care if you miss a week. In fact, we don't give a shit at all. But I'm just saying, for the 50 of you that do care, just saying, including Bob Reed and my mom. But again, that's going to do it for the 106th edition of the Confirmed Epic podcast. You can find this podcast at the Epic Review, thepicreview.com, at its official home. You can also find it at Geeks Worldwide, dgww.com, on actionfigurebarbecue.com. That's actionfigurebarbecue spelled out.com. As for me, you can find me at the Epic Review, but the most easy way to get in contact with me or to give me a question about the show. You can email thepicreview@gmail.com anytime, and I will respond. But hit me up on Twitter at @TheRealBradBell, DREEL Brad Bell. And once again, from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, we are out.
That's all I have to say about that.
This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks, assemble!